Hello, my amazing children. This is Grandma Carla, and I am back with Ralph S. Mouse. And we are on Chapter 5, The Great Mouse Exhibit. Ralph spent the rest of the week dreading Friday. The days, in spite of all that went on in Room 5, dragged, but the nights passed more quickly. As soon as the man with the transistor radio and broom left Room 5, Ralph squeezed under the door and ran into the next classroom. The pictures made of seeds were now hanging on the blackboard, but enough split peas and lentils had fallen on the floor to make a good meal for Ralph. In the kindergarten room, he discovered a doll's house, which he enjoyed exploring. Still, even though it was a mouse-sized bed, it lacked the comfort of the ready-chewed mouse nest in the library. One night, however, Ralph had a narrow escape. Beside the book bag in the library shelf, he discovered an interesting contraption, something like a metal snail. Of course, Ralph had to investigate and found his back stuck to something he had not known about: Scotch tape. The rest of the night was spent trying to free himself. When he had almost pulled his back free, his paws were stuck. When his front paws were unstuck, the strange sticky tape trapped his back paws and tail. Exhausted, Ralph managed to free himself as the first bus rolled up to the school. Wednesday morning, Ryan informed Ralph that he could not sleep in his pocket any longer because Ryan's mother said his shirt smelled funny. Once again, Ralph's feelings were hurt. Ryan also said his mother had discovered the tiny peephole Ralph had nipped in his shirt. "She would," said Ralph. Ryan defended his mother. "Maybe she's fussy, but she's a good housekeeper. That's why the hotel hired her, which was lucky for us. She really needed the job." Probably all mothers found something to fuss about, Ralph decided, even though his own mother was a poor housekeeper. He wished Melissa were fussier as he retired to the dark and the dirty tunnel of her left boot. He missed the lulling lub-dub, but found staying awake in class and paying attention to Miss K much easier. The next day, someone dropped a woolly mitten, and it made a restful change from the boot. Thursday afternoon, Miss K said, "Ryan, don't forget to bring our guest of honor tomorrow." "I won't forget," promised Ryan, as if he did not know Ralph was lurking at the back of the room. The next morning, after his usual night of enjoying all that the school had to offer a lonely mouse, Ralph stayed awake to groom himself because he wanted to look his best when he was the honored guest. The members of Room 5 also wanted to look their best for their picture in the newspaper, and they came to school looking neater than usual. Even Brad was wearing a clean t-shirt. Ryan brought the finished maze to school and placed it on the table at the back of the room, far above Ralph's head. "Drat," thought Ralph, and he ran up Ryan's leg in hope of getting a glimpse of the test that lay ahead. Ryan quickly popped Ralph into his pocket before he had a chance to look. Just before the last period, when the Great Mouse Exhibit was about to take place, Ryan pulled Ralph out and took him to Miss K. "Welcome, Ralph," she said. To Ryan, she said, "Put our little guest of honor in the fishbowl on my desk, then everyone can see him." To Ralph's horror, he found himself placed in a slippery glass bowl. Frantically, he scrambled about, trying to find a way out. When he found there was no way of escape and no place to hide, he sat quaking with indignation. A wee, sleek-it, cowering, timorous beastie, just as the poem said. As the bell for the last period rang, the guests arrived. They were Mr. Tanner, the principal, Mrs. Seeger, the librarian, Mr. Costa, the custodian, and Room 5's room mother, who brought 26 little bags of popcorn for a treat. The Great Mouse Exhibit was about to begin. "Where are the reporter and the photographer?" someone asked. "I'm sure they'll be along soon," answered Miss Kay, and she welcomed the visitors. Then she introduced the guest of honor, who turned his back and tried to become invisible. She pointed out all the pictures of Ralph above the blackboard. "As if I looked like those," thought Ralph with a sneer. Then Miss Kay said some members of the class had stories and poems about mice they wanted to share with their guest. She called on Brad, who slouched to the front of the room, announced that he wasn't much good at poems and that his poem was sort of dumb. He read, "Ralph is a mouse. He's stupid. He's dumb. He's as bad as a louse. He belongs in a slum." With a triumphant look at Ryan, Brad slouched back to his seat. "Thank you, Brad," said Miss Kay, who seemed uncertain as to how to make an appropriate comment. "That was very amusing." Ralph thought of several impolite things she could have said as he walked nervously around his prison, wondering how much longer before he would have to run that maze. He sniffed to test his sense of smell. Enclosed in glass, all he could smell was himself. A girl named Janet was next. "My poem is a limerick," she told the audience, and read, "A mouse once came to our school and quickly broke every rule. He got stuck in our paste, for he liked its good taste. So he said, 'I'll just sit here and drool.'" The audience laughed, and Janet, flushed with pleasure at her success, returned to her seat. "That's a lie. I didn't go near room 5's paste," thought Ralph as he trotted nervously around the fishbowl to make sure his legs worked. Gordon, the boy who did not like to write stories and poems, was next, but before he could begin his essay, the door opened and a young woman entered, followed by a man hung with cameras. "Sorry to be so late. We had to cover a big story about a truckload of chickens loose on the highway." The reporter from the Cucaraca Voice was out of breath. "Now go ahead with your program and pretend we aren't here." Flustered by the photographer prowling around adjusting his lens, Gordon began to read. "Mice are rodents. They gnaw things and they multiply rapidly." "They do not," thought Ralph. He had watched Miss Kay multiply by writing squiggles with chalk on the chalkboard. He had never seen a mouse do any such thing. The photographer was now circling the fishbowl with the black eye of the camera aimed at Ralph. Click, click, click. "I hope he isn't around when I have to run that maze," thought Ralph, darting around the fishbowl, trying to avoid that evil eye. Gordon read on. The reporter scribbled. The photographer turned toward the audience. The class sat up straight and smiled. "Mice are harmful," Gordon read. "They destroy crops and food supplies. They kill trees by gnawing around the bark. Mice can be destroyed by traps, poison, and cats." "That's mean," thought indignant Ralph. "We aren't harmful on purpose. We're just trying to get along in a harsh world." Gordon continued. "It has been said that if you see one mouse, there are 25 mice hiding that you don't see." Ralph thought this statement over. It might be true at the end, but it was not true at Sneed Elementary. The class was silent. Mrs. Seeger looked pleased, for she had helped Gordon find information about mice. The reporter thanked Miss Kay for letting her visit. "Good story, great angle, sorry she couldn't stay. Mayor cutting ribbon for the opening of a new auto parts shop. Meeting of the school board." With that apology, she dashed out the door, followed by the photographer, weighed down with cameras. Ralph tried to keep his legs flexible by running short sprints around the fishbowl. He must not let his muscles tighten before the race. Melissa was next. She paused to smile at Ralph before she started. "The title of my story is The Strange Disappearance of Ralph." Ralph stopped sprinting to listen. Melissa read, "A mouse named Ralph lived in the house of a little girl named Primrose. Primrose liked Ralph. She let him run all around the house. One day Ralph was in the laundry room. Primrose's mother told her to take the clothes out of the dryer. Primrose did not see Ralph. Some of the clothes she pulled out of the dryer fell on top of Ralph. A nylon sock with static cling stuck to Ralph. When Primrose folded all the clothes, she had one sock left over. The sock with Ralph stuck to it was gone. It had gone wherever socks with static cling go when they get lost. The sock and Ralph were never seen again. The end. The class thought the story was funny. Ralph did not know what to think. He had learned about static cling from watching those boring women who talked about it on television. But could he really stick to a sock? What a terrible thought. Just to be safe, he had better stay away from socks from now on. Melissa was happy with the success of her story until several members of the class asked why the girl's mother had not used static off in her wash. "She just didn't," answered Melissa. "I guess she didn't watch TV." "I am not so sure a sock would really cling to a mouse," said Gordon, a thoughtful boy, always interested in facts. "Oh, shut up," thought Ralph. These delays were making him nervous. A ray of winter sunshine fell on the fishbowl, making it so warm that Ralph began to pant. Gordon's remark did not bother Melissa. "The sock clung to him in my story," she said, as if her answer ended the discussion. "But the sock had to be someplace," persisted Gordon. The class took up valuable time defending Melissa's story. "Oh no, socks didn't have to be someplace. Socks disappeared at their houses all the time. They could look every place and never find them. Nobody knew where they went. Sometimes they couldn't find matching socks to wear to school. Their mothers had drawers full of socks without mates." Gordon did not know what he was talking about. One girl said that her mother took the family's washing to the laundromat and often came home with socks that she had never ever seen before. Why didn't they all just be quiet and let him run? Ralph began to worry lest Miss Kay think up a project to find out if a sock with static cling would adhere to a mouse. The discussion came to an end when Mrs. Seeger offered to look up information on static electricity for the class. Gloria was next. "My poem is called a haiku," she announced. "It is the kind of poem that Japanese write. It never rhymes, but it always has 17 syllables. Gloria paused a moment until she had the complete attention of the class before she read. "A little brown mouse smells cheese and steps in a trap. Snap! Now he is dead." Ralph was so horrified that he curled up in a tight ball to stop his trembling. How was he supposed to run a maze if he was shaking all over? The class, preferring verse that rhymed at the end of the lines, was silent, not knowing what to think of Gloria's poem. "I think that was mean," volunteered Melissa. "Well, I think it was good." Gloria was defiant. "Cruel," thought Ralph. "Cruel and murderous." "An excellent haiku, Gloria," said tactful Miss Kay, "but let's hope such a thing never happens to Ralph." Mrs. Seeger said she would look up haikus for room 5, and Miss Kay said she would read them aloud. "We haven't much time left," said Miss Kay, "and now our guest of honor will demonstrate how quickly he can learn." Ralph had waited so long to run that excitement had drained out of him, leaving him heavy with dread. Ready or not, he must begin his trial. His motorcycle depended on it, even though his legs were stiff and his entire body trembled. That is the end of chapter 5. We'll have to learn all about the actual maze tomorrow. But let's go ahead and look at our pictures here. Oh, here is poor Ralph stuck to the Scotch tape in the Scotch tape holder. I can see why he thought it looked like a giant snail, don't you think? And let's see. Oh, poor Ralph. Here he is, sitting with his back to the world in the fishbowl, feeling very, very upset that he's on display and cannot move at all. Let me see if there are any more. Oh, here we go. Here's a picture of the photographer snapping pictures at poor little Ralph in the fishbowl. And people reading poems, I think. Let me look. Yes. Oh, up here is the reporter, and she's writing, she's scribbling, and a boy who is reading amidst all of the hubbub of the photographer and the reporter. And I think that is it. So tomorrow will be chapter 6, and we'll find out about that maze. This is Grandma Carla, and I love you.